Finish the garbage you started. You can put that on a pillow somewhere. Alright, let's go on to part 2 of answering your questions. So in this video, I'm going to answer your questions about writing and getting published. So first question, Hope's Pink Unicorn asks, how many times have you wrote a story for it to end up going nowhere? Have you ever given up on a story? How many stories have you written, long, short, finished, or not? Oh crap. Let's see. I cannot tell you how many stories I've written, because I've written a lot. And a lot of them I wrote when I was a kid, so a lot of them sucked, and I have no idea where they are, or if I finished them. I don't think I've ever given up on a story. Now I've put a story like on a shelf to come back to later, because I feel like it's not the right time to write it, or I feel like I need more experience, but I've never completely given up on a story. How many times have I written a story and it goes nowhere? Pretty much every time I write a story. There's no story that magically writes itself. I feel like every story you'll ever write has a problem at some point in the story where you don't know where to go next, you don't know how to fix it, and you feel like you should just give up. And the hardest part is not getting distracted and not going to your next story. You need to finish the story that you're working on. That's the most important thing as a writer. Finish the garbage you started. You can put that on a pillow somewhere. This is a writing tip from my own experience. When I get stuck, I actually start at the ending and then go backwards. That helps with the whole going nowhere thing, because I know how it ends, I know how it starts, now I just have to write all the stuff in the middle. And honestly, every time I write a story, I get stuck somewhere. That's just being a writer. Alright, second question. An Inch Too Short asks, how do you come up with such amazing plots and evolving character development so well? Well, amazing plots? I don't know, I can't tell you this about character development. So you have two types of characters in a book. One is the flat, or I call it a static character. That's not the real writing terms, I don't care. You have the static character, and this character does not change throughout the entire book. So in my book, I have Julian as my static character. Julian doesn't really change throughout the book, so there's no character growth for him. He doesn't learn something new and become a new person and have a new perspective, really. But you do see him change a little bit in the main character's eyes, Marina, because as the book goes on, Marina learns more and more about Julian's personality that was always there. He doesn't grow any, but the main character sees him in a new light. Which brings me to the second character, which was usually the main character. The main character is always a character that has an arch. If you have a flat, static character for your main character, try again. So with your character, what you have to do is you have to start with what their perspective of reality is and their personality. And then you have to think about how do you want them to change by the end of the book. And then you need to create a series of events, the plot, that brings the character from their beginning to their new beginning. Now usually when I'm creating a plot, the question I always ask myself when writing is, if this was a Korean drama, what would happen next? Korean dramas are really good at adding a lot of drama, and besides that they use a lot of character-driven plot, which means the character's actions create the entire plot. This character makes this decision, and it makes a whole spider web of different events. I would like to do a workshop or something about creating characters and plot, but we'll talk about that later. Oh, I don't know how to say this. Digitalized. Digitalized. Ah, I get it. Digitalized. Asks. Oh, 3 questions. Okay. Do you make the entire plot and already know where the story should go, or do you just go with the flow while writing? I do both. So there's 2 terms in the writing world, pantser and plotter. A plotter is someone who outlines the entire book before writing, and a pantser is someone who doesn't do any outlining. Now, I'm pretty sure there's no writer that's completely one or the other. Each one has their own problems. If you outline too much, then it doesn't give the characters room to make their own decisions. If you are trying to control too much, you lose the authenticity of your story. And if you're a pantser, you have a lot of hopes and dreams that will be crushed as soon as you get to the second part of your book. So I actually do things kind of weird. I outline the first 5 chapters, and I try to write the first 5 chapters. After the first 5 chapters, I write any other scenes that are bouncing around in my head, so they can be at the end, they can be in the middle, they can be in places where I don't know where they go. So I write them all down, and then I usually outline like 10 chapters at a time, and I try to write in order, but it never works to write linear stories for me. So I usually get about to the middle and I get stuck. So then I start at the end and I go from the end and I work backwards. So I kind of do like this weird bookend thing when I write. It's one of your other questions. How much time did it take to complete The Five Princes? Also, did you write any other stories before The Five Princes? I actually wrote 6 full novels before The Five Princes. Now, I think about 4 of them were complete garbage. And that's fine, because the first few books you write is the learning process. So that's okay. The Five Princes I actually wrote 3 times. This book overall took me like 2 years to write. Now, my second book, The Rebellion, which I have a preview in the back, that book I actually wrote out in like 10 weeks. So each book is going to be a little different. They don't all take the same length of time. Some are more complicated than others. And digitalized. Last question. Can you share some good writing habits? Maybe. Write every day, but don't try to write an entire book every day. Try writing like 200 words a day. That's not even a page. You can do it. Also read a lot. Learn a lot of adjectives. Writing is an art and a science. I would say learn grammar to learn the basic structure of a sentence, and then as an artist, do whatever you want. Also experiment with lots of different types of equipment and ways to write. So a notebook, a computer, your phone, anything like that. Find what works best for you, because what works best for you will be different than what works best for everyone else. The Red Rose 4294 asks, what are some things you learned along the way while writing both on Wattpad and your novel that you didn't expect to learn? And what are some helpful tips for new writers? Alright, so I write all of my rough drafts on Wattpad because I like getting the feedback. Also, it helps me reach readers who are interested in the same kind of books that I write. Wattpad's helped me a lot because a lot of the times my readers, or I call them my tigers find plot holes that I didn't think about. So I really appreciate that. Also, I really like Wattpad because it gave me kind of a structure. I wanted to update every week. I would really focus on each chapter as an individual, and that helped my editing a lot. So helpful tips for new writers. I'm going to tell you this up front, and I want you to listen to me. I am being your friend here. I'm trying to help you. When you start as a new writer, you are going to suck. And that's okay. It's okay to suck. My number one pet peeve when I tell people that I'm a writer is they will respond with, oh, I wanted to write a book, but I have no talent. Here's a newsflash. Nobody has talent. Talent is grown. It's not something you're born with. When people have a talent at something, it's because they never gave up doing it, even when they hated it. So guess what? You're gonna hate your writing a lot because it's going to suck. But that's okay. Because the more you suck at something, the less sucky you will get as time goes on. I don't think that'll fit on a pillow. The tip is, if you love doing something, don't quit, even if you suck. Because if you're really good at something, but you hate it, what's the point in being talented? So if you want to be a writer, just write. It doesn't matter if the quality is good or bad, because you will get better. Alright, so I don't want to make these videos too long, so I'm going to make a part 3, and I will continue talking about the publishing process and the writing process. So come back. So this is the end of part 2. See you in part 3. Peace.